Well, I'm not going to be able to read this because it's too dark. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Judy White, a member of our new Sudden Valley Community Association Safety Committee. Thank you all for joining us here at the barn or via Zoom. Be sure to check out the displays and the free handouts on the tables at the back. And please add your name and email address to the sign-up list over on that side if you'd like to receive info and updates from our safety committee. Also, if you want to view any or all of tonight's presentations again, it will be available online within the next week or two via both the Whatcom Conservation District website and the Sudden Valley Community Association website. A brief comment for anybody who wants to know, the bathroom is in the back corner there. It's been very encouraging to see so many piles of branches this year for our maintenance department to pick up and ship. Thank you to maintenance for their effort on our behalf. Thanks also to our general manager, Joanne Jensen, and Kyle, and our admin for their support for tonight's workshop, promoting it, providing this barn, setting up, AV support, all of that. And a shout out to Ann Mossness, who devoted many hours of effort in past years to help Sudden Valley become more aware of and involved in wildfire preparation. And a very special thank you to our speakers, who are local experts and who are here to help our community move forward in our efforts to lower our risks in a wildfire or other emergency. Please keep in mind that FireWise is much, much more than just branch shipping, as we will learn tonight. And although some things that we can do to prepare for a wildfire or other emergency may be more important than others, everything that we can do will help. I plan to follow tonight's recommendations as soon as possible. I hope that you will too, and that you'll share what you know with your friends and neighbors and encourage them to do the same. The more that each of us can reduce our risk, the more we reduce the risk for our neighbors as well. And as the saying goes, we are all in this together. To begin, please welcome Annika Sweeney from the Whatcom Conservation District.
It's so wonderful to see so many people interested in this topic. Again, I'm Annika Sweeney, and thank you so much, Judy, and everybody who has made this event possible tonight. So we've got a pretty tight schedule. So I just want to, we're going to be moving through things pretty fast, but we're recording the whole thing. So if you miss something, you know that you can go back to YouTube. Anybody who registered on our website or anybody who signed up on the sign-up sheet will get that link sent directly to you. So if someone's talking too fast or you really want to see a slide again, don't worry, there'll be time for you to check it out afterwards. Also, as we go through our series of presenters this evening, we're then going to have a Q&A at the end. So please hold your questions till the end, maybe even jot them down in your phone, or if you have a notepad, so that we can really get to make sure that everybody gets their questions answered. And I'm sure that many of us will be sticking around afterwards to have some one-on-ones. So again, thanks so much for being here. And I'm just going to quickly introduce, well, I should introduce myself. I'm Annika Sweeney. I'm the Education and Outreach Manager for Whatcom Conservation District, and help run a lot of the programs that you're going to hear about tonight. But I just wanted to quickly introduce what the Conservation District is, and theoretically be able to move through slides that somehow maybe won't work. That's okay. Stand by. I've got it. Because it'll be a long night if this doesn't work. There we go. So yes, raise your hand if you have heard of the Whatcom Conservation District before. Oh, that's great. So we do a lot of different things in and throughout Whatcom County, but we are one of 46 conservation districts in the state, over 3,000 nationwide. We're a division of state government that is then run by a local board of supervisors that help sort of gear the priorities of the district. And we work in voluntary conservation stewardship. That's what we do. So we're a non-regulatory agency that works in partnership with local landowners to help steward their properties for healthy water, healthy land, and healthy people. So habitat restoration is a big part of what we do. We run the CREP program that assists with the protection, restoration of natural habitats. So a lot of those blue tubes that you see out in the county were probably planted through a program that we have. We've protected over 210 miles of streams so far in Whatcom County and still working on it. And yeah, this is only going to work if I turn it off and then on again each time. No, I think it just needs batteries. So Alexis, you're gonna have to sit there, unfortunately. Because, yeah. So if you go to the next slide. We also do conservation farm planning. We have 3 farm planners on staff. We work really closely with all sorts of large and small scale farms here in Whatcom County to help protect air, water, and soil with their conservation farming practices. And we offer that free and confidential farm planning. Again, we are non-regulatory. We also offer financial incentive programs for a lot of our farmers to help protect that land. Next slide. And then education outreach, obviously the best part of what Whatcom Conservation District does. And we have tours, workshops, we have farm speaker series every month from May until October. We also have big events like our Whatcom Native Plant Sale, which are going on our 32nd year. I bet a lot of you have been to our Native Plant Sale. It's always in March of every year. Okay, next slide. And finally, why we're here this evening, so our climate resiliency and preparedness work, we recently have increased our capacity in our wildfire risk reduction program. We now have 2 full-time staff that are covering both Skagit and Whatcom counties, and we hired a full-time forester for the first time. So we're up to about 18 staff members at Whatcom Conservation District that are all focused on helping landowners like you help steward their properties and to protect them from climate vulnerability. So without further ado, sorry for all the technical difficulties, we're rolling right through. Because next up is my team. There we go. To work through our wildfire risk reduction program. So Robert Walters is our technical expert on staff, and he and Alexis Bryson, if you want to, she's our amazing tech person who's surviving right now. She's surviving. And they are the folks that do one-on-one technical assistance here in Whatcom and Skagit counties. And they're going to talk a little bit about what you all can do to make that more resilient. And then we have a series of presenters after that.
Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for your patience while we try to iron out some of these technical bugs. I'm typically a wanderer when I talk, so I'm going to try to keep myself anchored right here. Just, again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for the interest in the Whatcom CD wildfire program. We hope by the end of the evening, we've given you some information and some resources that you can use to help increase your wildfire resiliency. And next slide, please. And some folks may not know this, but May is actually Wildfire Awareness Month. So it's May, you're aware. Great month. And there's a fancy proclamation from our county executive there to make it official. Next slide, please. Whatcom Conservation District, along with our partners, has created a multifaceted program for approaching wildfire resiliency. The 4 primary facets are empowering landowners through tools and resources, access to experts and technical information, supporting communities with wildfire planning, with registering and staying renewed for Firewise USA communities, engaging our partners, many are here in the front row. By working together and collaborating, we often come out with a better result for everybody involved. And then finally, evaluating wildfire risk, which is probably my favorite part of the job. It's where really nice people like you invite us out to your home and we get to walk around and give you some ideas and some information about how you can better prepare your home so it is prepared to survive a wildfire. Next slide, please. And how do we apply this multifaceted approach to Sudden Valley? Well, first we need to get an understanding of the characteristics of the neighborhood. Next slide. So I want to start with a little terminology that's thrown around in the wildfire world. And there's one term that we use a lot that a lot of people hear and they don't really understand, but it's WUI. WUI, that's a wildland urban interface or wildland urban intermix. The interface is where we've built houses right up against a forest, right? It's a big development with non-native plants and green grasses and sidewalks, and then there's a forest right next door. The intermix is where we've chosen to put our houses right in the middle of that forest. Usually larger lots, 2 to 5 acres, and got a long driveway to get down there. And so intermix, interface, it's all wooey. So I do like saying it, sorry. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, kick it harder, please. There it is. This is an aerial view of the Sudden Valley that was taken in 2022. It is 2 screenshots melded together. I thought I did pretty good, but as you can see, there are residences here in Sudden Valley that would be considered both intermix and interface. The important part again is you're all in the wooey. So, all right, it's getting your attention. Next slide, please. I don't remember making that one. No wooey, woo. Okay. Is this it? Yeah, okay. So it might be kind of hard to tell with the colorations on this map, but this is a localized mapping product that was produced to assess the wildfire susceptibility in Whatcom County. We've narrowed it down to the Sudden Valley area. And just a quick disclaimer, there's a lot of organizations, federal organizations that make fire susceptibility maps. This does not draw from the same data pool exactly. If you were to look at a nationwide map, it's not going to show this as being very severe in comparison to Eastern Washington or Arizona, Colorado. But for where we live, this is a very high area of concern. And why are we concerned? Next slide. We're concerned because what was once an issue for the other side of the mountains is now occurring way too frequently over here. The very recent fires in Lyman and up on Bender Road in North County are stark reminders. I mean, come on, folks, we have wildfires in April on the west side of Washington. So if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what else would. You've had fires in your neighborhood within the last 3 years. So it's a serious issue that we can't just dismiss and say it's belongs on the other side of the mountains anymore. That expansion into the WUI that we talked about earlier is part of that. But more importantly, the reasons that we're more susceptible to wildfire are these climatic issues where we've got increasing air temperatures, there's lower accumulation of summer rains, and there's the snow is melting sooner on the mountains. And in certain years, like this year, there's less of that snow that melts. Right now, we're at 68% of our snowpack. I don't think it's going to snow anymore this year. So that's probably where we're at. And all of Washington State has already been declared in a drought situation. So it's May and it's just going to get drier as we go through the year. So we really need to be on our toes about this. Next slide, please. People often choose to live where they do because they like the surroundings. If you like the forest and the trees, you want to live amongst the forest and the trees, which is why many of you probably live here at Sudden Valley, right? When somebody like me comes in and starts talking about wildfire preparedness, sometimes there's a misconception that I'm going to ask you to cut down all your trees. My friend Alexis is probably tired of hearing this, but the Lorax is my favorite Dr. Seuss character. I will never ask anyone to cut down a tree that doesn't absolutely necessarily have to come out. So as you can see by the pictures on the screen here, if we take some precautions and take some actions on our home, building a house in amongst the trees, it can still survive a wildfire. These are not photoshopped. That is an actual house with wood siding on it that survived a wildfire. At this point, we're going to pause for just a minute. We got to do a little cable switching, but we have a video I'd like you to watch. It's one of the most respected people in the wildfire world. His name is Jack Cohen. He's retired now, but even in retirement, he's a wealth of information and educational outreach. This is about a 13-minute video. I ask for your patience with it because this video does my job better than I ever could as far as giving the information and the how. Why don't you ever take the elevator down during a fire? Because they go up in smoke.
Uncontrolled extreme wildfires are inevitable. These are the conditions when wildland-urban interface disasters occur. The hundreds to thousands of houses destroyed during the wildfire. Does that mean that the wildland-urban interface disasters are inevitable as well? No. We have great opportunities as homeowners to prevent our houses from igniting during wildfires. Most of our perceptions are that these big wildfires are something we can't do anything about. They're overwhelming. If huge organizations can't control the wildfire, how is it that somehow I can do something to my house to keep it from burning down? It's not a matter of controlling the wildfire. It's a matter of changing those conditions of the house and its immediate surroundings. There's a lot that we can do to the little things to our house and its immediate surroundings in order to reduce the ignition potential of that house. I'm going to do an assessment on this house for its ignition vulnerabilities. The assessment is what all of us homeowners can do. Currently, we're not in fire season, but it's getting hot and it's getting dry. So this is a perfect time before the smoke's in the air to do this assessment. The great opportunity we have as homeowners is that we can do the little things around our house to keep our home from igniting. We can actually separate our house from the extreme wildfire. We don't have to rely on the control of the extreme wildfire in order to keep our house from burning down. Over the last 30 years, my colleagues and I have done research involving laboratory experiments, field experiments, and post-fire disaster assessments to quantify and qualify the relationship between a wildfire and a destroyed home. What we found is that the high-intensity flames, more than 100 feet away from the house, are largely incapable of igniting the house directly. It's the little things that seem to be destroying the houses. The burning embers, we call them firebrands, lofted out of the high-intensity wildfire to land in the community, sometimes directly on houses as well as the surroundings. It's not 100-foot flames. It's a pile of firebrands that would fit in the palm of our hand. So my colleagues and I designed a firebrand, an ember shower demonstration. We have a full-size house. It's got bark mulch and pine needles around the base. It's got pine needles in the rain gutters. It's got pine needles on the roof. We have an ember generator that then casts a brand blizzard at this house. In order for those firebrands to be effective in igniting the house, they either have to ignite the house directly, or they have to ignite something around the house that then can spread to the house. The main factors determining this home's ignition potential are right here. The home's characteristics related to its immediate surroundings. For our assessment, our perspective changes to this house being one of fuel for the potential ignition. Look around your house and see where the litter, the leaves, and the needles have piled up, and visualize that that's going to be where firebrands begin to pile up and collect. So here we have pine needle litter right up next to the house. It's on the steps. It could ignite and start this wall and step area on fire. It also can ignite on this lathing, which is right up underneath the wood shingle siding, and ignite that. This doesn't burn with high intensities. It burns with low intensities, but it's extremely important. In fact, on this house, it easily could be the critical factor that leads to its total destruction. If this house had rain gutters, this litter would be in the rain gutters, potentially igniting and putting flame right up at the eave line, potentially igniting the roof and going into the attic. On this side of the house, what our attention should be on is this gable vent. It's the most exposed kind of vent. I noticed that it's got fine mesh screen, which certainly helps keep large firebrands from going into the attic and potentially igniting this house. One of the things we looked at were vents during the brand blizzard. The brands are directly impacting that vent opening. The burning brands can blow right into the attic and potentially ignite the material that's in the attic. The remedy is simple. All we have to do is use finer mesh screen to cover the openings. One of the important aspects that we demonstrated was that you don't have to have a metal roof in order to keep the house from igniting, from firebrands. What we showed was that any roof that doesn't ignite and spread fire can survive the brand blizzard. So as we previously demonstrated, composition shingle roofs with pine needles on them don't represent a significant ignition problem. But look here, we've got a wood-sided wall coming down to the top of the roof where this needle deposition, when it ignites, is going to put flame contact right on the side of the wood wall. This results in flame contact and high ignition potential, resulting in the destruction of this house. The house includes more than just itself if there are outbuildings that are close enough to ignite and spread to the house. So maybe we have a shed or we've got a chicken coop, which then can burn long enough to ignite the shed that's next to that, which then ignites and burns sufficiently in order to ignite the house. So we need to be as concerned about the surroundings of our outbuildings and their condition as we do our house.
I looked into landscaping, I looked into fireproof home building, I looked into fireproof lawn furniture. I mean, I was going for everything that I could for the safest fire safety you could. And we had a checklist: no firewood stacked next to the house. All of our lawn furniture was fire rated. I wanted to feel like if there was a fire, we had the absolute best chance possible of us and our house surviving.
So some of the little things that begin to get a house during an extreme wildfire from the firebrands are, for example, something as simple as a broom being left out, flammable deck furniture, where we've got flammable cushions on the furniture on the deck next to the house. The cushions ignite from the firebrands. They ignite the deck railing, which is connected to the house.
We put 3 foot of rock siding all the way around up the house, as well as in our landscaping 3 feet out of crushed rock. We talked to people, all it took was one thing, firewood stacked in the wrong place, or lawn furniture caught fire on their porch. One tiny little technique that wasn't followed.
Well, knowledge is key. The more you know, the more you can increase your chances. And not always does that have to cost money, right? It's just knowledge. It's still a shock to go through a fire, but to come back and see your home, right? That's such a good feeling.
Flame contact on the house is a really bad idea. What we want to make sure of is that we don't get flame contact on the house. We don't have a fire burning across pine needle litter, for example, and making direct contact with the house. But that only takes 5 feet around the house in order to keep the flames away. Let's take a look at the surrounding area of the house. Adjacent to this wood wall, we've got these green shrubs. So the question is, are these green shrubs a big problem and do they have to be removed? Well, as long as we've got green foliage without dead material, we're pretty good. But if we take a look, we've got dead material in the canopy and we've got dead material deposited under the wood wall. What we want to do to keep the shrubs is to prune out all the dead material within the canopy as well as underneath in order to keep the wall and the shrubs from igniting. So we don't need to put out all the fires. We don't need to make sure that no fire occurs within the neighborhood. We do need to make sure that there isn't high intensity fire within 100 feet. And we want to make sure that surface fire doesn't come directly to the house and ignite it. We definitely can't have a flammable wood roof on our house. It's the most susceptible to firebrand ignitions. But there are many things that occur on a seasonal basis. Cleaning up the litter around the base of the house, out of the rain gutters, making sure that we've swept the deck of pine needle litter and leaves, and making sure that our firewood piles aren't on the deck, and making sure that we've cut the grass and not having things right up next to the house that can burn. We've just taken a look at this home, but it's obvious that every home and every property are going to be different. That's why it's very important for us to seek information so that we can find the vulnerabilities to ignition of our own homes. Remember, if your home doesn't ignite, it doesn't burn. You've got to act now to address these little things long before the fire ever starts.
Okay, so now we have a little more board switching back and forth here, but if you want to go down a real wormhole when you get home tonight, look on YouTube and just search Jack Cohen wildfire. He's besides the warehouse where they build houses and burn them down to see why, they go up into the boreal forest in Canada and they take 5-acre plots and set pieces of houses next to them and light the whole forest on fire, see how far and close away those walls can be before they ignite with different type of structures. But not everybody's a fire nerd like me. So
Historic wildfires have been raging in the western United States. Dozens have died, homes have been reduced to ash, large swaths of land.
These structures.
there we go. All right. Also like to thank that British new wave band that was doing the backup music for us there at the beginning. I think they're called Feedback. Slide 18. Okay. Oh. I'll just start. I'll let the slides catch up. But as was emphasized on the video that we just watched, the most important thing we can do as homeowners is to work in that home ignition zone and to create defensible space. And when we say defensible space, we're not talking about an area where firefighters can set up and defend your home. We're talking about creating a space around your home so that when you evacuate in case of wildfire, you can leave with the peace of mind that your house has a better chance of surviving that fire because you've taken the actions that research has shown will do the job. All right. We refuse to let technology win. We'll get it figured out. So thank you, Annika. So again, there's steps that we can take in this home ignition zone. Some of them are easy, sweeping the needles and stuff like that. Some are hard and a little more expensive, replacing an entire cedar shake shingle roof, but they're all really important. They all pay dividends. Next slide. We take this home ignition zone and we lay it out into 3 zones. The first zone, zone 1, is the house itself and the first 5 feet around it. And the things you can do here, clear the debris around the bottom of the house. Don't use wood chips and mulch for landscaping right up against the house. Replacing screens and dormers and soffit and gable vents with the 1/8 inch screen. It really does make a difference. If you go down the Jack Cohen wormhole with YouTube, he has a whole video just throwing fire at those screens and shows you why the 1/8 inch is better. And of course, cleaning the gutters and the roofs. Next slide, please. The second zone is from that first 5 feet out to 30 feet away from the house. And we like to call it the lean, clean, and green zone. This is where you want to maintain your landscaping so that it doesn't promote surface fire into ladder fuels that will climb up a tree and then become a canopy fire. Doing things like breaking up your vegetation structure instead of having a line of trees that act like a fuse that will come to your house. We break up that landscaping, and then using hardscaping such as stone or features like that creates a natural fire line. So as fire travels along the ground, it'll come to one of those hardscape spots and stop. Next slide, please. Embers are the #1 cause of ignitions for homes during wildfire. It is not the 100-foot flame that Hollywood shows us. It's like Mr. Cohen said, it's a handful of embers that land in the wrong spot. You've got that one corner underneath your siding where you didn't sweep out and embers pile there. They ignite the pine needles and eventually it gets the siding on fire and it's just a chain reaction from there. So taking those small steps near the house, but then as we work out a way, we want to eliminate the ladder fuels. We want to stop that fire from traveling into the canopy and becoming a source for those embers going towards our house. Next slide, please. We've laid out here some of the next steps that Sudden Valley might consider towards being more wildfire resilient. And we'll come back to this graphic in a minute. Next slide, please. In addition to individual home risk assessments, which Whatcom CD provides free of charge, we also provide community level assessments for those communities that are interested in becoming FireWise recognized and certified. There's different iterations of FireWise. It doesn't have to be the entire Sudden Valley community. Smaller neighborhoods, all they ask is for a minimum of 8 people taking part per neighborhood. So Sudden Valley could be, I don't know, 3,000 homes divided by 8. Somebody better than me do the math. A lot of FireWise communities, right? Or we could break it into just a few larger sections, but that's something that, you know, would be one of the next steps that we talk about and consider going down the road. Next slide, please. If Sudden Valley as a whole, or even smaller groups of homeowners are interested in pursuing FireWise, we would conduct a community level risk assessment for those areas. This assessment then leads to a report with recommendations for actions to be taken. We would also conduct several individual home risk assessments within the designated areas. All this information would be then used to work with community members to produce an action plan that identifies specific tasks to be done over a designated period of time. We are here to help and support, but we can't do all the work, and we can't kick you in the seat of the pants and get you inspired to do this work. It really has to be motivated from within. We are a great support structure. We have the resources and the information to get you through the process, but you got to want to do it is kind of the messaging, right? Next slide, please. Our friends at the Whatcom Sheriff's Division of Emergency Management is going to present on a lot of what we've got on this screen here, and so I'll leave that to them. But just kind of remember that graphic. It's going to look familiar probably here shortly. And then my final slide, please. In the momentary of closing, which I'll be back in a little bit, I hope that we've given you some useful information. I hope we've made you aware of some resources that are available. But more than that, I hope you feel empowered, that there are actions that you can take. There's information you can acquire that gives you peace of mind in case there ever is a wildfire in the area and your homes are threatened. With that, I'd like to introduce Kirk Troberg with the Washington DNR Wildfire Division.
Okay, thank you. So before I jump into the information on the slide, I'll just provide a little context to who I am and what the DNR does. So as Robert said, I work for the Department of Natural Resources, which is the state level agency. And I am the Culshan Unit Fire Manager, which means I manage the wildfire program for Whatcom and Skagit County at the state level. And the DNR has the jurisdictional responsibility to suppress or help suppress wildfires on all non-federal forest land in the state of Washington. And that gets defined, forest land gets defined as basically land with natural vegetation capable of carrying a fire. And so there's a lot of overlap here in Sudden Valley. We share a lot of our jurisdictional overlap with the South Whatcom Fire Authority. So you would be seeing both of us were there a wildfire. Now, with that in mind, you heard Robert say that wildfires are not just an Eastern Washington problem. And I want to give you some context to that and to the situation we're looking forward to here this summer. So in 2023, Northwest region of Department of Natural Resources. And so that is Whatcom, Skagit, Island, San Juan, and Snohomish counties. So the kind of the 5 counties in Northwest quarter had 169 classified fires. So that is just a statistical fire that the department responded to, not a false alarm, not a partner assist, a statistical fire. We assisted 12 agency partners on fires outside of our jurisdiction. Across the whole region, all 5 counties, we had 244.18. They got real specific with that one. Acres burned on DNR protected lands. July 4th may come as no surprise, was our busiest day of the year, where we had 6 fires, 8 false alarms, and 1 assist for a total of 15 responses. We used fire retardant dropping from airplanes on 2 fires, 1 in Skagit and 1 in Snohomish County. And we used aircraft 46 times on fires last year. And that's all in our little corner of Northwest Washington. And then the picture here is a fire that was just over the hill last July from Sudden Valley up on Galbraith Mountain near the bike trails, burned 3 acres. Next slide. So already, and this is outdated actually, in 2024, we've had 30 fires and 8 in Whatcom County. We had 1 over the weekend since I made this slide. A total of 90 acres burned in the region so far in 2024, 31.6 of them in Whatcom County. And all 29 of those fires, including all the stuff in Whatcom County, were human caused. And here's just another picture for some context of local fires. That was Lake Whatcom fire last year. 40 acres burned just across the lake here. That one was actually not human caused. That was a lightning fire. Probably 99% of our fires plus a decimal are human caused, but that one was actually lightning. So what we have available to combat these fires, in addition to our partner agencies, the DNR has 10 engines staffed across the region, 2 suppression modules that are scalable up to 10 people. And then from June to September, we have a helicopter in Big Lake that's our first response. They can get anywhere in that region in about 30 minutes. Next slide. You can skip this one. I thought I deleted it. Next slide. Okay. So some weather outlook. Robert also mentioned the snowpack and how it wasn't great this year. On your left, you'll see the snowpack from April of last year. And this is in the numbers you're seeing are percent of normal at that time of year. So Oregon and to the south was doing excellent. Washington was in pretty good shape. Our little corner up at the top there was really the worst spot on the map at 85% last April. This year, this is what Washington looks like. I pulled this data on April 9th. I pulled another one today and meant to try and slide it in here, but ran out of time. Needless to say, it looks worse. There's more red, more orange. We've had a really shockingly dry winter, and I agree with Robert. It's probably not going to snow again this year. So, next slide. And the forecast looking forward. So the May, June, July timeframe. We're looking at above average temperatures and below normal precipitation, and above average temperatures expected for the August to September period too. It's a little hard to forecast several months out. No one really knows, but the indices we do have indicate that we're in for hot and dry again. And I believe that is all my slides. Yeah, so I think I'm turning it over to Whatcom County DEM.
Well, I'm Hollywell Salkeld from Whatcom County Sheriff's Office Division of Emergency Management. And so next slide. So what does emergency management do? I think a lot of people think that we're the ones that respond and do things, but we actually we kind of back up the people who are the first responders. So we tend to lead, coordinate the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery to help minimize the impact of disasters and emergencies on people, property, environment, and the economy. Next slide. So we, largely what we do is we provide training and exercises for responders. We help manage volunteers such as community emergency response teams. Let's see, and there are many others. We help manage grants such as from the 2021 flood. We've had quite a few grants come through, and we kind of do the pass through of the money to victims. We maintain our emergency operations center. We provide the support to the incident command post with situational awareness and resources to the folks that are the first responders. We do education. We maintain and operate an emergency notification system. We manage the tsunami siren systems. We develop plans, and we provide a 24/7 duty officer. So some of the planning that we do that you may hear about, the natural hazard mitigation plan. We have that in place. We have the wildland fire action plan, which is more of a first response for the first responders plan. And one plan that we need to work on is the community wildland protection plan. I think Robert already mentioned about the wildland interface. So it's basically houses butt up right against the forest. And then the next picture is actually of this is a Google Earth of Sudden Valley. So you're definitely in these areas and intermix where you get the trees just intermingled with the houses. Okay, next slide. So I was asked to spend most of my time on evacuation. And when you look at the Sudden Valley roads, there are a lot of intertwining they just kind of go all over. And when I've driven on them, they're steep. Some of them are steep. They're narrow. You've kind of got pretty much one way in and out on Lake Whatcom Boulevard. So, you need to be aware of that. we can give as early warning as we can if you need to evacuate the area. But you're knowing your roads, directions, how to get out, but also think of if one road is blocked, what's another one that you can use? So you probably have your habits of how you drive in and out to your house. But sometimes try taking another route, even if it's a longer route, just so you're a little bit more familiar with the roads in your area. It's kind of like when you go in a building, you may always come in at work, you always come in one direction, but it's always good to know what's another exit out of that building. So same sort of thing with your roads. When it is hot and dry and it gets to July and August with the expectations, as mentioned before, keep informed. We do put out what's called an emergency management daily briefing. You can find it at whatcomeready.org. It's posted every day. When an incident happens, we will update it, minute by minute by minute. There is also Facebook there, and you don't have to have a Facebook account to click on it and get into it. It will still, if you just go ahead and click on it and go by, close out the login, you can still read the posting that we have. There's also one with X or Twitter, I believe. Also, just keep track of news outlets. Radio stations, we do provide information directly to them. KGMI is one that is required to send the emergency alerts. Most of the other radio stations will voluntarily, but KGMI is required by law to carry those. Another thing to do is to sign up for alerts on the whatcomeready.org, which is more likely for us to be able to reach you in the avenues or in the methods that you would like to be reached. So next slide. So speaking of notifications, it's the fire officials or somebody other than us who decides when and where to evacuate based on that fire, the wind, and the terrain. We can support them by asking deputies, or they may directly ask deputies and Public Works to provide traffic control, which in this area would probably be nice to have in that the roads are so narrow. It's a much quicker way to get people out than letting you just do it like normal. But we're the ones that can send and post the notifications. We do it on whatcomeready.org. We use what our mass notification system called AlertSense. And we can reach you on that with your landline, as well as text, email, and voice. Text to voice on a cell phone. So if you sign up for those alerts, we can reach you by whatever methods that whatever information that you put in there. We also have access to the Integrated Public Alert System, or IPAWS, which is the same as the Amber Alerts. It's the federally based notification system. That one only comes out as a text on a cell phone. So for those of you, I know one person here anyway told me they do not have a cell phone. They don't plan to get one. So signing up on AlertSense for those alerts, I would highly suggest that, because the only way we can access a landline is through AlertSense. The IPAWS system does not do that. IPAWS also can allow us to send out emergency messages on the radio and local TV. So those tests that you hear probably about 3 times a year, those come from us. And then we do have just some of that basic evacuation language. This is used in almost all as far as I'm aware of, all the counties in Western Washington, and probably most, if not all, in Eastern Washington. So the level 1, which is get ready, means that you need to start paying attention to what's going on, start gathering your stuff together. and think about how you're going to leave. So next slide. Level 2 is the get set. So this might be a good time to leave, particularly if you have persons with access and functional needs that may make it slower for you to be able to leave. But it's also a time that you need to make sure you can receive evacuation notices because things can change fairly fast. And the third one is go. And this means it is time to go. It's not time to pack. Packing had to happen earlier. One thing to remember is this is a time that first responders may not be able to get back in and go door to door. It's beyond that point. It's a kind of a, you're on your own at this point in many cases. So next slide. And that's it.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Nelson Lee. I'm with the City of Bellingham Public Works Department. I'm in the Natural Resources Division, and I work within the city's Lake Whatcom Watershed Land Acquisition Program. So the Land Acquisition Program is designed to protect water quality in Lake Whatcom. So the city, the county, and Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District, Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District, we all have a responsibility to provide clean and safe drinking water to over 100,000 residents in the city and throughout Whatcom County. And through that partnership, an essential strategy identified in order to provide clean and safe drinking water is to protect forested land and keep it in an undeveloped state. We do that by purchasing undeveloped land within the Lake Whatcom watershed. So the city has adopted this land management strategy in an attempt to reduce phosphorus from entering the lake. Phosphorus makes our drinking water source very difficult to treat and creates challenges that become increasingly more expensive over time if not addressed. And excess phosphorus can come from developed areas and fertilizers and things like that. So the land acquisition program is in the top tier of the city's strategy to provide clean and safe drinking water because it's very cost effective. It's kind of like a preventative action we can take. So to this point, we've protected a little over 2,700 acres. So this map I've got pulled up here shows some protected land across the Lake Whatcom watershed. That blue dashed line is the watershed boundary marker. And then the blue polygons kind of scattered, the darker blue polygons scattered around the lake. Those are city-owned properties purchased with land acquisition funding. The green parcels there are Whatcom County protected lands. I'm sure you're all familiar with that Lookout Mountain area, just uphill of Sudden Valley. And then there's some Whatcom Land Trust protected lands on there marked in teal, as well as a jointly owned and managed couple properties marked in the blue polygon with the red outline, kind of also in that Lookout Mountain area. So where our land acquisition program intersects with Whatcom Conservation District is that we both have a common goal of climate resilience, and component of climate resilience is obviously wildfire resilience. So we want to be responsible landowners. We want to be good neighbors. We want to protect our forest land so it can continue to provide clean drinking water. And we also want to protect our neighbors who live next to these properties. So with our partnership with the Conservation District, they help us reach out to folks inside and around the watershed to help individuals better understand wildfire risk and how they can prepare their homes, and then how the city can help on our land as well. So we do have, you can hopefully see on the map that we do have some properties adjacent, kind of abutting some of the neighborhoods in Sudden Valley. So if Robert of the Conservation District comes out and does one of those risk assessments at your home, and they find that within that home ignition zone, there's city property, some of our property, we'll come out there and do our part to work within that home ignition zone on city land as well. Okay, thanks. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. This is awesome to see everybody come out, and thanks to Whatcom CD for having us here. My name is Jess, and I'm a Natural Climate Solutions Fellow with Colshan Carbon Trust. You all are probably going to have a lot of questions for all of us at the end, so I encourage you to go visit our table over there. I'm also joined by Howard, who's our interim executive director, as well as our wonderful intern Cedra and the newest member of our board, Chad. So come say hi and definitely connect with us if you have any questions at the end of the presentation here. Go to the next slide. All right, so Colshan Carbon Trust, we partner with local landowners as well as a variety of different local organizations in order to accelerate and get folks to adopt a variety of different natural climate solutions that revitalize rural communities, as well as focusing on regenerating the land, reducing emissions, and sequestering carbon. We're going to put some emphasis today on revitalizing rural communities and community members in general, with focus on financial benefits, as well as going back to that video that you watched earlier, kind of looking at alternatives to taking care of those vulnerabilities to ignition was one of the quotes in that video. So we'll get to explore that today. One of the options that we're currently looking at as a natural climate solution is biochar, and a lot of you probably aren't familiar with that concept. Biochar is essentially a very carbon-rich and porous solid material that's formed via the combustion of biomass under limited or no oxygen supply. That process is called pyrolysis. And our emphasis is currently on the utilization of a variety of waste biomass, emphasis on it being an excess biomass that's coming from the agricultural as well as forestry sectors. To give you an idea of kind of what we've been working on, we've actually partnered with Whatcom Conservation and Skagit Conservation Districts previously for our 2023 Community Biochar Program. At that time, we purchased 2 ring of fire kilns, which you'll kind of see here. It looks a little blurry. Hopefully you can see that okay. And that is one of the methodologies for the creation of biochar, and something that we'll get to explore perhaps within your community. And in 2023, we held 5 community demonstrations, which hopefully we'll end up being able to do with you all as well. Now that we've hit 2024, we're currently working on a biochar scale-up project. We have partnered with Skagit Soils as well as a variety of different other organizations to partner with 10 different farms within the region who are applying biochar amended compost on their farms. And we're currently in the preliminary section of that, where we have gone and most of the farmers have applied that biochar on their farms, and we're seeing fantastic results in comparison to an application of a standard compost. These are some photos from Skagit Soils during the mixing of the biochar with the compost. We went ahead and went with a 1:10 ratio, just kind of an idea of what a post-process biochar might look like, and then as it gets mixed into soil or compost material. Okay, so how is this all relevant to you and everything that we've talked about today? Biochar has a significant benefit that biochar is a significant benefit that we've identified within agriculture and within gardens and for the benefit of our soils. And so our goal is to get you all to a point where all of that residual debris, those trimmings, those things where, you know, you've gone and you've done the work that we've talked about here today, and you're left with this big pile of you know, your dead shrubs and your trees, and say, well, you know, what can we do with this? And so we're hoping that through a collaboration with most of the folks here today, we'll be able to go ahead and collect all of that debris and perhaps get to a point where we can have one of those special kilns out, go ahead and do a burn and successfully produce a product that you would then be able to utilize within a community garden or within your own gardens. This would, of course, enrich the community through involvement, expand education opportunities. It could reduce some of that noise that it probably occurs with the chipping that's currently being done with those materials. And of course, like we just talked about, there's a fair number of soil benefits that could be reaped if it was properly mixed into the soil or the compost. That includes an increase in plant growth and in crop density, as well as nutrient transfer, water retention, and a variety of other benefits. So in an ideal world, you all already have a source of what we would call a sustainable feedstock, all of that excess material that's coming from your yards, or as said earlier, those vulnerabilities to ignition. And then you do have a significant community space that might be able to be utilized to go ahead and dry and sort that material. And in partnership with some of the folks here, go ahead and do some creation of that biochar, where looking forward, you could then go ahead and apply it within your gardens, in your yards, in order to benefit your crops, your flowers, anything that you're growing, and then look for further benefits from there. I think that's all I've got right now, but if you have any questions or you want to learn more, I know there's a lot there that you probably haven't heard of, so do come visit us. Thank you. I think next is the South Whatcom Fire Authority.
Oh. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Mitch Knowles. I'm the fire chief for South Whatcom Fire Authority. I see I've been forced technology upon me. I was trying to avoid technical issues by not participating in them, but I appreciate it. It's actually more beautiful than I could ever imagine. So, South Whatcom Fire, we are, many of you or most of you are probably familiar with who we are, as we're pretty local and close by, and provide fire and EMS services is what you generally see from us. But we are an all hazards fire department agency, so we respond to structure fires, EMS calls, technical rescue incidents, hazmat, and wildland incidents. Those wildland incidents are increasing, obviously, in volume over years. Our agency protects over 21 square miles within our jurisdiction and almost over 32 square miles of neighboring forested jurisdiction. Most of that is within a wildland urban interface or intermix area, from Sudden Valley, Lake Samish, Chuckanut. We cover all of those areas in basically 3 different mountains and 2 valleys there that we work across. And we do that out of our Sudden Valley station, our Geneva station, and our Lake Samish station. We partner very well with the Department of Natural Resources on fires. Kirk talked about a lot of the areas we respond to are a joint jurisdiction, so we share that, and you will see us both there. That can look many different ways. Some jurisdictions are primarily DNR's jurisdiction, and we are there to support them through agreements that we have, or they're here to help us in areas that are primarily our jurisdiction, or there's some that are truly joint. And so that partnership works really well. They are the specialists in the state for wildland firefighting, but we also train all of our staff in wildland firefighting awareness level training and initial attack training. And we have several of our members, I think we're close to 15 to 20 this year, of specialized wildland red carded trained firefighters in various levels that we continue to train. We provide equipment. We do have a wildland brush engine that lives in our Lake Samish area that responds. We work very closely with the Sheriff's Office and DEM partners as well. And I know there's always a lot of questions about what happens if this occurs. And tonight's obviously a lot about the incident that doesn't occur, which is our preferred incident. But when it does occur, I'm just here to provide you some assurance that when you call 911, there is a plan in place that starts with a local fire response that is jointly, most of the time DNR knows about it at the same time we do. When they're working, they get notified similarly, and we request them. And we have resources within the county and also within the region and ultimately within the state through mobilization plans that exist, so that if we become overwhelmed or they become overwhelmed or the incident becomes larger and larger, there is a plan in place for that. So it's all a very complex incident. Kirk showed some information about, or talked about, the Lake Whatcom fire last year. And that's probably a big one on everybody's mind in here, that they saw and drove by and heard planes and everything else. That's a complex incident that had a lot of moving parts and pieces to it that you don't always see. So I'll certainly be around for questions at the end, but I want to give an overview. I don't want to take away from the preparedness conversation, because I think that's the most important, is making sure that community members understand that there is a role for all of you and a little bit of self-ownership on your properties to try to prevent that. We certainly can't do all of those things for everyone, but we can certainly be partners and be a resource, work with getting you in touch with the conservation district. Doing those property assessments or community assessments are great. A lot of the strategies that are in there are actually things that occur during a wildland fire, especially a larger incident. As those start to expand, firefighters and other people actually go through and start to do some of that clearing and debris clearing to avoid that fire from traveling home to home when there's time. So those are strategies that firefighters can use and do in large incident scenarios as well. So I appreciate everybody. I will be sticking around this evening and answer any questions. And I will turn it back to Conservation, Robert. I think the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Well, even with technical difficulties, we are on schedule. So first, I do want to apologize to all our attendees on Zoom about the issues with the camera. Just rest assured, while I'm up here speaking, you didn't want to see me anyway. So that's all good. And we are going to open it up for Q&A period right now, but we do have some people on Zoom who have posted some questions. So since they didn't get to see the other good looking people up here tonight, I'd go ahead and like to start with those questions. So I'll repeat the gist of the questions. She wants to know that in case of an actual fire in Sudden Valley, if there would be real-time aerial footage provided by drones so that they would be able to access that and find the safest escape route. I think I can safely say no. I mean, maybe in one of those movies in the perfect world in the future, yeah, it's a great idea. But as Holly mentioned during her portion of the presentation, there are resources out there at walkandready.org where you can sign up for multiple avenues of notification. And, so we're not going to worry about this in November and December, right? But come June, July, August, September, maybe don't turn your ringer off on your phone at night. Set it a little closer to your head, right? It's a little forethinking and preparedness about the time of year and the season that we're in. So unfortunately, no drones.
All right. And then a second question posed was, how do you sync recommendations for the removal of vegetation within the perimeter of the house with SVCA limits on vegetation and tree removal?
So that's a very, very good question because it's not only Sudden Valley, there's HOAs and community associations all over Whatcom County. And so you are limited as homeowners on what you're able to do, on what your homeowners association says, but they also have meetings where you can go and raise your hand and say, hey, any plan you can't change is a bad plan, and we need to change this plan. Because a quick example, Ruidoso, New Mexico, 20 years ago, they required cedar shake shingle roofs. Then they had a big fire and they changed the rule real quick. So my recommendation would be to get involved in your community association and don't wait till something is burned down to make those rule changes. Oh, okay, cool. So now we're open up to Q&A here in the room if anybody has, and our other experts are available to answer as well. So please.
Many of us in Sudden Valley have very large trees on our properties. Not easy to remove, nor do we really want to remove them. How far up should we be limiting them to be fire-wise?
Right. So that's another good question. The rule of thumb is 10 feet. And you may notice that a lot of our native trees around here, your firs specifically, are fire adapted. They've been surviving fires for thousands of years. So as they grow bigger around and taller, they naturally drop those branches. And you won't see lower branches on a lot of native trees around here because they know fire is a natural part of the regime when we don't put them out and when we don't put things in the way of fire happening. So don't worry about cutting down the tree, limb the tree up. If it's a super, super big tree, then it's kind of a ratio thing. And if the branches are 12 feet up, but when the boughs are out real far and they're hanging down the ground, you probably want to go ahead and take those out too. And then you just want to treat the base of that tree like you treat your house. You don't want the ground fire coming to it and sitting there and cindering and possibly igniting that tree. So landscape around it accordingly. Don't let shrubbery grow up around it. They call them ladder fuels because fire climbs up it just like a ladder. So you don't want other shrubs close in the vicinity that where they're on fire, they're less than 10 feet away from those lower branches.
We live here in Gate 1 in Sudden Valley. There are about 600 homes in Gate 1 with one point of access. And we'd like to know what we should do if there's an emergency that blocks that access.
Mitch, Holly?
I'll answer it. Everybody can hear. Knew this one. There's a lot of dead end areas and limited access areas. I live on a dead end street here in the valley as well. But Gate 1, like you said, there's a large access there. What I will tell you is if an incident occurs within that blocks that access, there's a little bit of a misnomer on how these fires will develop, especially in this area, right? This is a very densely populated area. Very rarely do we have fires that go unnoticed in where the homes are and things. They just get noticed very easily and very quickly, even at night. If we had something that completely blocked that access, you have to also know that that is the most important thing for us to get into that incident. So we're going to protect that corridor at all costs for our safety and to get in to mitigate that incident. When I look at, the Gate 1 entry point there, a lot of it is golf course and there's a few trees in there, but there's very limited vegetation along the side of it, other than and large timber on parts of that. So there is some protections already naturally there, along with the street itself being a fire break. So that access point, that road, will be most likely usable just because of its width, its dimension, the golf course on the sides. Heavy timber in general is very difficult to be ignited depending on all of the conditions at the time, but we aren't in Eastern Washington or some of those explosive fire behavior and fuels areas in this area. It certainly can happen, but those are some natural protections there. So it is a concern. It doesn't go, it's not something we don't think about. But there are ways. The golf course is a great place. We can drive on that if I need to. So I agree with that. Gate 2 has very challenging access in general, just because of how you get through it, how we all get here, right? So I don't disagree with you there. We, again, respond the best we can with the access that we have, and knowing that those access points, if a fire starts within the actual driveway where the magical forest is, as I'll call it, that's something we're going to take as a high priority to protect that ingress and egress for community members. And some of that means that we may have people shelter in place and they may not actually be evacuated, because the last thing I need is 600 houses with cars on the road where we can't get to the incident. So it's very situational dependent and very what if. And I'll just say that we will adapt to that, and it's going to be a dynamic incident, and managing that is going to be complex and challenging. That's about what I can give you on that scenario. I can't solve and put in an additional entrance. Those are things that are a challenge for us, and we have to adapt to them just like you do. One right there, I think, first. Hello. Hi, yes, how are you?
Hi, we live in Gate 2, and we had a fire last year, 10 o'clock at night, right next to our house. And I have to say, you guys came very quickly. But I got the garden hose out and I had to get that grass fire. After that, we took the initiative, we cleaned the front yard, we trimmed the trees up, and we are still working on that. But one other great thing that came out of this was that all our neighborhood, we have the condos next to us. We're on Whispering Cedars, just above Lake Louise. And we got the neighborhood together and we did a fire safety program and exchanged phone numbers. And it was a very good thing to know your neighbors very well so that we can all work together. But you guys came and thanks goodness it didn't run down the hill. Thank you.
That's a great point too. That incident, like you said, luckily was very little damage done to any, there was no damage done to any structure. I think a little fence charring, but it brought up a great point. And I've been in communication with that condo association. I don't know if those individuals are here tonight. I encourage them to. We had plans to have an event at our fire station, but as everyone's well aware, that is currently in some disarray. But we are still planning on having that event. And if any of the communities or the small groups in your neighborhood or a group of homeowners want to do a presentation, we can certainly try to make that happen and give you our perspective. I don't have all the answers. We rely on a lot of partners and cooperation between agencies, but I would love to come and talk to anyone, everyone, all the time. I clearly like to talk a lot. So anything else?
Chief, I have a question about Gate 5. Is one main entrance and access, exit access. What about the other access point, which is the other gate, which is way down on Whatcom Boulevard?
That one's usually open seasonally. During the warm weather, it's usually open. We can navigate it. We cover that with all of our training with our people. It's not ideal. It's very steep. It's very narrow, but it is another way in and out. If it was blocked for some reason, I know Sudden Valley has their rules on that. We can certainly I can make magic happen if those need to be opened, if we had to. Correct, Lake Louise Road, and then down on Lake Whatcom Boulevard, the Gate 28 Southern Courts. Yes. Yeah, like I said, it's a scenario where we chose to live in a very heavily densely populated and densely forested area, and it can be difficult. And I stress back that if we work on, roads are a big thing for us, and DNR will back us up that large roads like that are huge as far as stopping fire and being brakes for fire. Is it going to solve all of our problems? No, but that is a big advantage of having a road that we can drive on and get through, even if you've seen video of people driving through firestorms online, and those are not always the scenario. Those are obviously very selective and on media outlets and whatnot. those can happen, but generally roads are places we can go, and those are the best things we can do, and we try to protect those at all costs as well, and that's what I can assure you of.
I heard that Station 22 is closed, and if it is there an estimated time that it will be open again?
I was prepared for that too. So the Sudden Valley Fire Station is currently closed for response. The administration is still there, so myself and other chief officers and admin staff are there. Response personnel are moved out because there are literally no drywall on the walls. It is basically bare in living quarters. So all of our crews are at the Geneva Fire Station currently. There is not an estimate for opening. I'm hoping that by the end of the year. What's occurring is there's insurance mitigation and adjustment that's occurring. That's finally hopefully being settled shortly. And that amount there was to restore that back to its original. That station was planned for renovation after almost 30 years of needing renovation. We're trying not to do this twice to the community by moving everything in and out of there twice and capitalize on accelerating that plan. So that's currently in the works. Our commissioners are actually evaluating that project tomorrow to try to accelerate that and make that happen. What I can tell you is that the Sudden Valley community we're still meeting the fire authority's response objectives. Yes, there is a little delay from Geneva. If there's a critical emergency, when chief officers are around, most of us actually live in the valley, so we can respond to those incidents as well and provide life-saving measures in critical high acuity incidents and initial scene operations, fires and other things. There still is some sort of response there. We're all active working chiefs. Spend a lot of time behind a desk, but not all of it. So it is not ideal. I get that. And we are trying to work on that as quickly as possible, but it is a lengthy process with architects, engineers, construction delays, some of the challenges that we find in dealing with bidding processes and things in government. So we're working on it. I should have made a slideshow. This wouldn't have happened to me, I know.
Now I realize the fire that was across the lake last year was pretty far away from here. But one of the things that I learned from that was I happened to see photos on social media because one of my friends is a photographer, took that photo that you guys used in the presentation. But I noticed that most people are on, other than the word on social media, news coverage and notification to Sun Valley residents didn't happen until like noon the next day, which I thought was kind of late to let people know that this was happening across the lake. So is there a better strategy going forward for fires that are somewhat near us that could make people panic?
We heard that a lot in the beginning of that. I won't deflect that. That's not within our jurisdiction, so we don't have jurisdictional authority on public information releases or press releases. Obviously, we knew about it. We also knew in consulting with DNR and the fire district there that there was no threat to the Sudden Valley community whatsoever, that was isolated to that area. So in evacuation notices and things that went out, there are some that just naturally and I'll let Holly comment on how that works, but wireless alerts when they go out, you can't target a very specific area. They spread out. So there are Sudden Valley residents that got notifications and are like, where is that road? What is that? I think that was a learning experience for us as well, because we were part of assisting in that. And I think that was a learning experience for DEM as well, to be very clear on where those are. We certainly want to make sure people are aware of things, but we also don't want to block up or confuse the public with things that aren't affecting our community, that yes, we're aware of it. We can assist with it, but there is no threat to the community. And that is good feedback, because maybe that's something we can put out, is that we are aware of it, we're monitoring it, and there is no threat. I know we did put out some social media posts later in that day, and honestly, a lot of that was because myself and the other on-duty crews were actually responding to assist the fire district there. We do not have a dedicated public information officer. That is yours truly. So in an incident, we do not put that stuff out. So I'll let some others throw out some questions. Go ahead.
Yeah. So We live right over here on in Gate 2, and we have about an acre of trees on our property. They're mostly cedars, but there's a lot of like alders that are just constantly falling over. And rather than haul them out all the time, I was considering getting a wood chipper and just chipping those, but I heard some comments of probably not putting those around the house would be a good idea. But what about like in the area, removed from the house? Would it be okay to just chip all those and, put them on the ground there? Or is that not a good idea?
I'm going to defer that one to the conservation. They might have some better solutions to that answer.
How long is a piece of string? Gonna depend on the string, right? So without seeing your specific property, I'm gonna say probably. Again, we've break it down into the zones, right? That first 5 feet, nothing combustible. The next 30 feet, nothing continuous. Then out to 100 feet, we want to remove ladder fuels that become a crown fire, right? So if you want to use those things they will put natural nutrients back into the ground and stuff like that for the other vegetation use. Just, be careful, be mindful of where you place it. And everything combustible is a fuse. So don't let the fuse run all the way to your home or to a place that will get to your home. So if it sounds like you got a little bit of space there, go ahead and use it out away from the house. And again, just break up that continuity of fuels. Yeah. Yes.
Lake Louise, and he said, "Oh, some of these bigger limbs, we can actually leave them down here. They work as a natural firewall." Is that true? Like a cedar, let's just say you would trim a cedar 10 feet up, and they're like bigger limbs, and you would leave these cedar limbs without the green, just the bare stumps.
As a firewall?
Yeah, I don't think.
No.
Ex-
I'm not going to
yeah.
beat around the bush. No,
Right,
that's
right,
not true.
exactly. Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, testing. There we go. Could any of the agencies speak to any active coordination specifically with Sudden Valley HOA in regards to emergency preparedness or attempted coordination or planned coordination?
Well, we're here tonight.
Great.
So this is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is sometimes frequent turnover with your board and management and things like that. I've heard rumors. But Judy is part of the safety committee and she has spearheaded this thing. I don't know if you guys know how much work Judy has done behind the scenes for this thing. She's made my life extremely easy. Just basically showed up with equipment that didn't work right and did our thing tonight, right? But I would become involved with that committee or at least attend a meeting or send questions to them, encourage them to continue this engagement with ourselves and the other agencies and work forward towards that increased coordination.
I have one more question. Okay. Some of the presentations discussed cedar shake roofing. Is the concern also for cedar shake siding?
It is, but she mentioned that a lot of the slides tonight mentioned the danger of cedar shake shingles on your roof. And she asked if the same danger was considered for siding. The short answer is yes. The long answer, though, is that you can do things to the surroundings of your house to possibly prevent the siding from igniting, right? If one thing we look for when we do these evaluations is a distance of 8 inches minimum between the bottom course of siding and the ground, and what type of, if you have an open foundation or a closed foundation. Wood is a very poor conductor of heat. That's why we toast marshmallows on wooden sticks and not steel ones, because you can hold that stick for several hours and your hand never gets hot. So just holding a lighter up to a log, you're never gonna get that fire going, right? Cedar is more combustible. The shakes shingles on the side, especially if they're aged. If you have the means and the ability to replace that, at least like you know, the bottom 3 feet, like in the movie where they use the stone. You can use fiber cement board or something like that. That's a suggestion. But a more cost-effective means might be just to, that 5-foot zone, make it completely non-combustible so that fire and cinder can't get to that section. The caveat to that is though, we have, you know, on your roofs where you have wall to roof, dormers, pop outs, things like that. That's an area where you have nooks and crannies where litter and pine needles can accumulate and then ignite that siding up the wall. So yes and no answer.
And I just wanted to respond to your part of your first question. I believe Judy has a sign-up sheet in the back if you want to be involved in the safety committee. It is an ad hoc committee of the board of directors. I am the chair from the board of directors. My name is Lori Robinson. You can reach me at bodrobinson@suddenvalley.com if you have any questions or want to be involved in the committee. We do have 7 voting members, but that does not mean you are excluded from the membership. When we start up our meetings, you will be able to fully participate in the meeting, even if you're not a voting member.
Okay. And we are at time for the evening, folks. Some of us will be mingling around the back. If you have some more direct questions, we're happy to hang out and answer those for you. But really want to thank everybody for coming out again and showing your interest and your concern.
Round of applause for Judy White, who organized all of that.